Hello there, guys. I am currently back home in Washington State for Thanksgiving break, and while I'm here, I'm going to be doing some birding, because, that's kind of what I do, and I figured I'd make a video about it, so here's some Thanksgiving break birding for y'all. I am currently in Everett right now because a long-billed curlew has been seen here, which is a bird I have not seen yet, so we're going to see if it's still hanging out here, and hopefully, if it is, I can get to see it. If nothing else, there's a whole bunch of other shore, water, ocean-going, shorey birds that are hanging out here, so I can look at them, if nothing else. And then after this, I'm going to go out to Spencer Island, which is like a little swampy area. I haven't been there before, and see what I can find out there. So yeah, hopefully you will enjoy my little journey, and let's go. So the search for the curlew in the marine park began. It was a very nice day out, not a lot of wind, not any big waves. And one of the animals that was actually most obvious in this location was not a bird, but a mammal in the form of a bunch of harbor seals that were swimming around and lounging on some of the docks. But there was also quite a few ducks that were in the area, including these widgeon that decided to fly overhead. And then there was also a lovely belted kingfisher male that showed up on one of the bridges, as well as this lovely American crow strutting about, as they tend to do. And then, perhaps unsurprisingly, there were many seagulls in the area, including this glaucous wing gull right here. But eventually I made my way out to the parking lot, which is where I found the target bird hanging out in a big flock of seagulls. There it is, the long-billed curlew. Certainly not the habitat I was expecting to see my first long-billed curlew in, but sometimes this is just how it is with birding. Sometimes you see them in incredible landscapes, and sometimes you see cool birds in a parking lot. It was mostly just chilling, doing a little sleepy sleep with the gulls, but it would get up and walk around every now and then. And unfortunately, while I was there was a guy that showed up that was getting a little bit closer to the curlew than I think he should have been, and the curlew was definitely reacting like that. It was kind of trying to walk away from him a lot, and at one point it even flew over to the grass to kind of get away a little bit. And this is kind of my quick area for a PSA of just don't be that guy. Don't get overly close to birds and make them feel uncomfortable. A lot of these birds, especially rare birds, already get to see enough human traffic as it is. It's not the best idea to do anything that overly stresses them out. Obviously, no one's ever going to be perfect at it. I unfortunately have had tons of times where I have been birding and I have unfortunately, gotten closer to a bird than I probably should and flushed it or something along those lines. We all make mistakes, but still just try to be knowledgeable and considerate about how you act around birds. Just respect the bird, and if it's showing behaviors that show it doesn't really like you being that close, then that's a sign that you're too close and you need to just give it its space a little bit. But the curlew was not my only lifer that I got in this parking lot. I was also able to see my first ever California gulls. They're the ones with the yellowish greenish legs, as well as the red spot and black stripe at the end of their bills. And then I was also able to see my first ever short-billed gulls, which look a lot like ringbills, but their bills are even shorter and they obviously don't have the ringed bill. Very cool to see, and it was very fun getting to just watch all the gulls do their thing in this parking lot when the curlew was just kind of hanging out and not doing too much. And right before I left the marina, I actually found a domestic mallard, which is a pretty nifty little find. There was also some bufflehead and some pigeons hanging out, but that kind of mostly wrapped up my experience here, and it was time for me to move on to Spencer Island. Well, that back there was really cool. I got to see the curlew, which was, kind of the goal. I was able to get some really nice views of it. It was just kind of hanging out in the parking lot pretty consistently with the gulls. But we're not done birding yet for today. I have come out here to Spencer Island, which is, there's kind of like this wetland area over there. It's right next to all of these actual sewage treatment ponds, though. And there are a lot of birds that like to hang out in the sewage treatment ponds. So I will be going out to the more wetland area, but I will also be looking at the treatment ponds because there's a lot of stuff in here. I've actually I was eating lunch before I was recording this, and I've just been watching these couple shovelers just out here feeding and having a great time in the treatment ponds and all the gulls and stuff flying around. Man, that pair of shovelers there sure was cool, but they by no means were the only shovelers there. There was a lot of northern shovelers at this site. The most northern shovelers I've ever seen in one location. But it wasn't just shovelers, there was a whole bunch of different waterfowl species that were hanging around these ponds. From scaup to pintail to buffleheads, there was a lot. There was also a big flock of dunlin hanging out there, and they were flying around doing some cool murmurations. The dunlin, like many shorebirds, nest way up in the Arctic, but they hang around the Washington State Puget Sound region every winter. And when you do find them, you typically find them in big flocks like this. And then as I began to walk down the trail more, there was a surprise flyover flock of snow geese, which I was not expecting to get. And then there were some song sparrows that were competing over a good spot to hang out on the cattails. And then there was also this great blue heron out here that was just chilling. As well as this juvenile bald eagle that was also just chilling. And then there was this black-capped chickadee that was just kind of flying around the riveting, whatever those are called, of the bridge, searching for I don't know what, but something I guess. Female northern harrier that was, surprise, surprise, not flying but actually perched. And then the last notable thing I got to see there was my lifer Bonaparte's gulls. This was just a day for lifer gulls for whatever reason. But then, right before I left Spencer Island, I saw a different domestic mallard. How crazy is that to see two of them on the same day in two different spots? So I realized I never actually filmed an outro for me leaving the retention pond, so that's a bit cringe. But I did leave, if you couldn't figure that out. And I am now right next to the University of Washington, actually. But I'm going to go birding at Union Slough, which is just right over here, which should be really cool. Seems like a lot of birds have been seen here. I haven't actually gone birding like in and around the Seattle area before, so this will be a first time for me, so we'll see what we can find. At our third and final location of this birding video, we start off with the ubiquitous American crow. And then a nice little flock of white-crowned sparrows hanging out, as well as a golden-crowned sparrow that's kind of hanging out in the back there. It's the one that doesn't have the white crown. It doesn't have a golden crown right now because it's in its non-breeding plumage. Look, there's a chickadee. Look, he sure is chicken D's. I don't know, I guess. Oh my gosh, are those green-winged teal? No way, there's 3 of them there, a male and 2 females. That's pretty darn wild. But you know what's even more wild? Here's 3 mallards in the opposite sex ratio. Little legends they all are. But let's not stick with the ducks for too long. There was also a northern flicker that was hanging out kind of far away, as well as a great blue heron, which it now appears as though my camera was unfortunately focused on the background. So you're gonna have to experience him in a little bit of blur, but you know, it's just use your imagination of what he would be if he was perfectly clear. Here are some house finches with a couple American goldfinch that are mixed in with them. And then an Anna's hummingbird. I love Anna's hummingbird. They're the most northernly staying of any hummingbird species. This was taken in the winter and they're still hanging out in Washington, which is pretty neat. Buick's wren, not much else to say there. And then I emerged out onto Lake Washington with a very lovely view of Mount Rainier in the background there, my favorite mountain. And hanging out here was a whole bunch of water birds, including some pied-billed grebe, and some double-crested cormorants, as well as a whole bunch of widgeon and coots, which you can kind of see in the background there. They'll get their own video section here soon. But before that, we got some gadwalls hanging out, swimming around, and then a bufflehead that just showed up in the middle of the screen. Here's a much closer view at a different male bufflehead. And then a glaucous wingall, which was trying to do as the seagull do and eat a dead fish. But when I looked up from the seagull, I saw this mink swimming across the small little channel there, which was like so wild to see. I was not expecting to see a mink in Seattle. That was pretty epic. And then after that, I came to a small little pond which was adjacent to the lake, and I got to see some shovelers doing their iconic circle feeding. This is a really cool behavior that was only being performed by a couple birds here, but can be performed by really big flocks of shovelers. When circle feeding, these shovelers swim around in a circle, and the action of this circle does something with water currents, with physics, I guess, and brings up nutrients from lower water columns up to the surface, so then the shovelers can then feed on these nutrients and small animals. Even though this wasn't a really big flock of shovelers doing it, and I would love to see a big flock do it, it was still pretty cool to see for the first time. But speaking of big flocks of birds, here is the foreshadowed footage of all the coots and American widgeons. They were just hanging out in this giant raft out there on the water. As those who have watched my channel before probably know, I really love watching just big flocks and herds of animals. And so getting to see so many coots and widgeon hang out in the same spot was really neat to get a watch for a while. But after they all began to move away, I began to walk back to the small pond where the shovelers were to see what was going on there, when suddenly I heard some rustling in the reeds and saw a mink chasing a rat, and was able to get my camera on just in time to catch the mink dive into the water to get the rat. This was an incredible, just in the right place at the right time piece of footage I was able to get. And in Seattle of all places, I was not expecting to ever get to see a mink hunting in Seattle. It was really neat. But while I was still reeling from that awesome encounter, some mallards and a pair of hooded merganser decided to swim right up next to where I was hanging out. It was very cool to have these birds be so close to me and them willingly be so close to me. I was just sitting in the same spot the whole time and they came to me. And hooded mergansers are so pretty, same with male mallards, and getting to see them up close for such a long time was an incredible experience. But with that about wrapped up all the major birding events I did. I did walk a little bit farther down, saw some more cormorants as well as a ring-necked duck. And then, and you won't believe this, I saw another domestic mallard with the same basic color plan. What was up with this Thanksgiving break, dude? Like every time I went birding, I saw a domestic mallard. I've like never seen a domestic mallard in places like this before or since. It was just, I don't know what was going on. It was crazy. Well, that was really cool. Got to see lots of awesome birds here. Lots of ducks, which you know I love. And then also that mink killing that rat was wild. I did not expect to see that. But I've been here for quite a bit longer than I probably should have, so it is time to head back out. Thank all you guys for watching this video, and I hope to see you all in the next one. Bye-bye. And one of the most animal of all time.